Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss another aspect of the two sensational by-election wins for the Liberal Democrats in Devon and Labour in Yorkshire. Neither result came about because the winning party had completely changed people's minds about them since 2019. It might be fair to say more voters look at each of them favourably now, but they're not exciting voters in the numbers needed to have pulled off these wins under normal circumstances. Now, this was because voters changed their usual and preferred voting habits and voted tactically for the candidate best placed to unseat the Conservatives. And if we see a surge in tactical voting again at the next general election in just the right seats, could be enough. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there's still a lot to unpick from the recent by-elections, and there might be another video tomorrow and perhaps next week, depending on how things pan out, because Tory MPs are panicking a lot right now. But one of the big stories of the by-elections that has been picked upon has been the success of tactical voting. Now, we have a truly awful electoral system whereby not everyone's vote is equal. In fact, such is the unfairness of first past the post and the folly of tribal politics that of an electorate of tens of millions, it's down to about 300,000 to decide who forms the government each general election. But I've talked about the benefits of proportional representation before and will again, but in the absence of such a system, our only chance is tactical voting. Now, I'm a Labour supporter, have been my adult life. That would suggest that I vote Labour in general elections. And so I do, but that's because everywhere I have lived, they have been the best place to displace the Conservative candidate. If I lived in a constituency where a different progressive party was best placed, I would vote for them. Not just an anti-Tory vote, because it helps Labour form a government anyway. And when it does, it helps them get a progressive legislation agenda passed. The Conservatives are entirely regressive. They are the only mainstream party in Britain to be regressive. Labour, Lib Dems, Greens, Plaid, SNP all disagree on some pretty important policy areas, which is why they're all different parties opposed to each other in different parts of the country. But there is a huge crossover on the Venn diagram of politics where they share common philosophies, which is completely out of touch with the Conservatives. And right now, a big area of crossover is not having selfish, entitled criminals tanking our economy, demonising the disadvantaged and trashing our reputation abroad. And as the crossover between these parties becomes more obvious and more focused, their supporters also see the need for tactical voting in greater numbers. It happened in 1997 to finally displace the Tories. It happened also in 2017 to try and steer us from a hard Brexit. It fell short of the mark then, so the Tories remained in government, albeit with their majority gone. It was abandoned in 2019 to our cost, but it may be back again, certainly has been back again in the recent by-elections and may be for the next general election. It should be noted that the former safe Conservative seat of Tiverton and Honiton saw Labour finish in second place in 2019-2017, and not just a close second place with the Lib Dems, way ahead of the Lib Dems. Way behind the Conservatives, way ahead of the Lib Dems. But there was no way for Labour to actually win. There were enough left-leaning voters in the area to put Labour in a comfortable second place. No way of getting them into first place. Moderate Conservative voters are happy to vote Liberal Democrat if they think it will help, not Labour. So Labour went from second place in 2019 with just under 20% of the vote, down from 27% in 2017, to third place with less than 4% of the vote. They didn't even get their deposit back. But this is not to Labour's shame. Many of their traditional voters saw what was happening and gave their votes to the Liberal Democrat candidate. The same may have been true of some Green voters as well. In fact, a Green supporting TV chef who lives in the area publicly stated that they were doing it, and it worked. It's hard to say for sure. It's entirely feasible that the Lib Dems would have lost this seat without that help from Labour voters. The seat was not just won by moderate Conservatives switching to the more palatable Lib Dems, as well as other Conservatives just staying at home. Those inevitably formed a big part of it, but tactical voting from people who would not normally entertain the notion, helped it over the line. Catapulted them across it, really. If the same thing happens in the general election in each of the Lib Dem target seats, could be huge. We saw the same thing happening in Wakefield as well. The Lib Dems lost their deposit as their support switched to Labour. And these by-elections did not show this tactical voting in isolation. Could also be seen last year. It was seen in the North Shropshire win by the Lib Dems very, very clearly last December. But also the Hartlepool by-election earlier last year. Now, that wasn't enough to stop the Tories that time, but it was still in evidence. And it is important to note, it won't always work. If there's enough people, of course it will. There won't always be enough people. So it won't work every single time. There won't always be enough people voting tactically to make the difference. But for every seat where it does, that's one seat fewer for the Tories and one seat more for the potential Progressive Alliance. And the thing is, there was no campaign by either the Liberal Democrats or Labour to encourage this voting behaviour. In fact, in a sign of just how scared the Tories are of tactical voting, the Attorney General, Suella Braverman, said that it's worrying that Labour and the Lib Dems had this dishonest electoral pact. Well, she didn't explain, as far as I can tell, how it's dishonest exactly. Both the Lib Dems and Labour stood a candidate in both seats, as they will for all the seats in the general election. There's no legal compulsion for them to do so. Their own party rules sort of suggest they should. They were both clear as to which seat they were prioritising. Voters voted tactically, not because Labour or the Lib Dems were compelling them to, or even asking them to, but because they are more opposed to the Conservatives than they are to rival opposition parties. This is the double-edged sword for the Conservatives. They have almost complete dominance over the right-wing vote. This was challenged by the Brexit Party in 2019, but they formed a pact. They pressured Nigel Farage to step down candidates in many seats, which he duly did. That was a pact. But normally, the Conservatives gather up all the right-wing votes and make their main fight in the centre. But other political parties not only need to fight the centre, but each other for the votes on the centre-left. This is to the benefit of the Conservatives. But the other side of that coin is that sometimes those other voters wake up, see the damage the Conservatives are doing, see that they want no part of it, and they put party political sentiments to one side and fight the common enemy. That's all that's happened here. Nobody stood down candidates as the Brexit Party did for the Conservatives. Nobody in either Labour or the Liberal Democrat leaderships asked voters to vote for the other party as appropriate, as the Brexit Party did for the Conservatives, and the Daily Mail did for the Conservatives. But I'll be coming on to that. But, the Conservatives are deathly afraid of it. So on today, Daily Mail. I mean, that's the biggest mouthpiece for Tory fears. Their front page today highlighted that fear. It was in full show. Not only is the headline attacking the prospect of tactical voting, making it sound shady, but it throws in their tried and tested bogeyman. If you read the article, it goes on about the potential for a Labour SNP alliance in the article as well. I mean, consider what this headline is even all about. The article is attacking Labour for not campaigning hard enough in Tiverton and Honiton, and the Lib Dems when it comes to it for being similarly lazy in Wakefield. So are they suggesting that activists have to be forced to campaign in places they don't want to? Why didn't they attack Conservative MPs for not campaigning properly in Wakefield? A lot of Tory MPs famously refused to campaign there. Boris Johnson didn't even visit. It's all raging hypocrisy for the Daily Mail to be complaining. Not only did they form part of the campaign pressuring the Brexit Party into their non-mutual pact with the Tories in 2019, they also spearheaded a campaign to persuade people to vote tactically in 2017 as well. So tactical voting works. The Conservatives and their client media are terrified of its power when used against them. They can't legislate against it. What are they going to do? I mean, they have already legislated to make cooperation between different parties less desirable with funding rule changes to funding, but they can't legislate against tactics like this. So how should Labour and the Lib Dems proceed? Well, I do think that the next election will see another surge in tactical voting of the sort seen in 1997 and 2007. The urgency to do so for people opposed to the Tories is going to be immense. I think it does no harm to see the snowflakes at the Daily Mail reporting on it, because then it keeps the conversation alive. It keeps raising the issue with people. there may be voters who don't really think about the concept of tactical voting, so it's good to remind them that it's possible and effective. All Labour and the Lib Dems really need to do in order to marshal those willing to vote tactically is drop not so subtle hints about which seats each one is prioritising. The non-Tory media can do their bit by publishing which seats each party is targeting as well, because that's where the tactical voting will do the most good. I will certainly be doing my best to publicise it at the time. And for those who still wouldn't be sure which is the anti-Tory candidate to go for, my general advice is always check out the betting odds. You know, they know who's likely to win. They've not got it wrong. Find the non-Tory candidate with the shortest odds the day you cast your vote and stick your cross in their box. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.